My family kicked me out thinking I'd beg, so I left forever, landed my dream job, and watched their world collapse without me. My name is Aya, and I'm 24 years old. I've been living in what I thought was my family home in suburban Denver my entire life. My parents, Marina and Quentin, along with my older sister Diana, who is 26, have always treated me like I was some kind of inconvenience they had to tolerate. I know that sounds dramatic, but I'm not exaggerating. Growing up, Diana was the golden child. She was popular, got decent grades without trying, and my parents funded her entire college experience at an expensive private school. She graduated with a communications degree and has been finding herself for the past 4 years while living rent-free in our finished basement, which my parents converted into a luxury apartment for her, complete with a kitchenette and separate entrance. Me? I was the family disappointment from day one. I was shy, preferred books to parties, and struggled with anxiety. When it came time for college, my parents told me they'd already spent their education budget on Diana, and I needed to figure it out myself. So I did. I worked 3 part-time jobs through high school, saved every penny, got scholarships, and put myself through community college for my associate's degree. Then I transferred to a state school for my bachelor's in computer science. I graduated 3 years ago, debt-free, through sheer determination and countless sleepless nights. Since then, I've been working as a developer at a local tech company, getting promoted from junior to mid-level last year. I've been living at home and paying my parents $800 a month in rent, which Diana has never paid a single dollar of, by the way. 6 months ago, things started getting really tense at home. My parents kept making comments about how I needed to launch and stop being dependent on them. This was rich coming from people whose other daughter hasn't paid for anything in 4 years, but whatever. Diana started joining in too, making snide remarks about how pathetic it was that I was still living at home at my age. The comments got more frequent and more cruel. Marina would make jokes about me being a spinster who'd never leave home. Quentin would roll his eyes whenever I tried to contribute to family conversations. Diana would openly tell her friends, within earshot of me, about how embarrassing it was to have a loser sister who couldn't make it on her own. 4 months ago, I overheard a conversation between my parents and Diana in the kitchen. They were planning to kick me out and convert my room into a home gym for Diana. They were laughing about how clueless I was, and how they couldn't wait to finally have their house back to themselves. Marina actually said, "Aya's always been too weak to stand up for herself. She'll probably cry and beg, but we just need to be firm." That conversation changed everything for me. The next day, I started applying for jobs across the country. Not just any jobs, but specifically targeting companies in expensive cities where my skills would be valued. I focused on Seattle, San Francisco, New York, and Boston. I'd been building my portfolio for months already, so I was ready. Within 3 weeks, I had several phone interviews scheduled. By week 6, I had 2 in-person interview trips, which I told my family were work conferences. The process took longer than I hoped. These big tech companies move slowly. It was nearly 3 months before I got a job offer from a well-known tech company in Seattle for $72,000 a year, a solid 60% increase from my current $45,000. I accepted immediately. Then I started apartment hunting online. I found a nice 1-bedroom place in Capitol Hill for $1,800 a month. It wasn't luxury, but with my new salary and some savings I'd managed to accumulate, it was manageable. I did a virtual tour, sent in my application with all my documents, employment verification, and 3 months of bank statements, and got approved within a week. But I didn't stop there. I knew my family would try to make my departure as difficult as possible, so I planned for everything. I researched moving companies and got quotes. I opened a new bank account at a Seattle credit union and started having my paychecks deposited there. I even found a great therapist in Seattle and scheduled my first appointment. I told my current boss about my situation, and he was incredibly understanding. He agreed to give me an excellent reference, and even offered to let me finish a few projects remotely during my transition period. He also wrote me a glowing LinkedIn recommendation. The hardest part was keeping it all secret. Every day I had to sit through dinner conversations where they'd make jokes about my future failures or hint about upcoming changes to the house. Diana even started measuring my room one day, claiming she was just curious about the dimensions. I said nothing. I just smiled and nodded. This morning, I was working from my laptop in the living room when all 3 of them came in with serious expressions. Marina was trying to hide a smirk. Quentin had his arms crossed like he was about to deliver some tough love. Diana was practically bouncing with excitement. Marina cleared her throat dramatically. "Aya, we need to have a family meeting," she said. I looked up from my laptop, feigning innocence. "Sure, what's up?" "Well," Marina began, her voice taking on that fake sweet tone she uses when she's about to be cruel. "Your father and I have been talking, and we think it's time for you to take the next step in your life." "Oh?" I said, still typing. "What kind of next step?" Quentin stepped forward. "The kind where you learn to be independent. You're 24 years old, Aya. Most people your age have been living on their own for years." Diana couldn't contain herself. "What they're trying to say is that you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live." Marina shot Diana a look, but then turned cold. "You have 30 days to move out of my house," she said with the cruelest smirk I'd ever seen on her face. Quentin nodded approvingly. "It's time you learned independence." Diana actually started laughing, finally getting rid of the family burden. I stopped typing and looked up at all three of them. They were standing there like they'd just delivered the most devastating news possible, waiting for me to break down or start begging. Instead, I smiled. "Perfect timing," I said calmly, closing my laptop. "Because I just signed a lease across the country and start my new job in 2 weeks. You won't see me again." The change in their expressions was immediate and beautiful. Marina's smirk faltered first. Her face went from smug satisfaction to confusion to something approaching panic in about 3 seconds. "What?" she stammered. "I'm moving to Seattle," I continued, standing up and stretching like I was discussing the weather. "I got a job offer at a great tech company for $72,000 a year. I start in 2 weeks, and my lease begins this weekend." Quentin's arms dropped to his sides. "You are what?" "I'm leaving this weekend," I said, still maintaining that calm tone. "The moving truck comes Friday morning to pack everything up." Diana's laughter had died completely. "You're lying." I pulled out my phone and showed them the email from the company confirming my start date. Then I showed them the signed lease agreement. Then, just for fun, I showed them the moving company confirmation. Marina sank onto the couch. "Aya, you can't just leave." "Why not?" I asked. "You literally just told me to get out. I'm getting out." Quentin was struggling to find words. "Seattle is so far away." "That's the point," I replied. That's when Diana started freaking out. "You can't leave. What about helping with Mom and Dad when they get older? What about family emergencies? What about what, Diana?" I interrupted. "What about continuing to be your family's emotional punching bag? What about paying rent while you live here for free? What about being treated like garbage in my own home?" Marina started crying actual tears. "Aya, we were just trying to motivate you. We didn't mean you should move across the country." "Really?" I asked. "Because 3 months ago, I heard you all in the kitchen planning to kick me out so Diana could have my room as a gym. You were laughing about how weak I am and how I'd probably beg to stay." They all went completely silent. "You thought I was pathetic and couldn't make it on my own," I continued. "Turns out you were wrong. I can not only make it on my own, I can thrive, and I can do it without any of you." Quentin tried a different approach. "Aya, you're being rash. You don't have to prove anything to us." "I'm not trying to prove anything to you," I said. "I'm trying to prove something to myself, and I already have." That's when the real panic started. Marina began hyperventilating about how they'd never see me again. Quentin started talking about how family is supposed to stick together. Diana actually had the nerve to say I was being selfish. "Selfish?" I laughed. "Diana, you're 26 years old and haven't paid for anything in 4 years. You live in the basement rent-free while I pay $800 a month for a single bedroom. You're calling me selfish?" "That's different," she sputtered. "How?" She couldn't answer. Then Marina tried the guilt trip. "What about holidays? What about birthdays? What about grandchildren someday? What about them?" I asked. "You made it very clear that I'm a burden. Burdens don't typically get invited to holidays." "We never said you were a burden," Quentin lied. "Diana literally just called me the family burden 5 minutes ago." More silence. I could see them all starting to realize the magnitude of what was happening. I wasn't just moving out, I was cutting them off completely, and they were beginning to understand that they'd pushed too far. See, here's what they didn't know. I've been their financial safety net for years. When Quentin lost his job 3 years ago, who do you think helped with the mortgage payments? When Marina's car broke down, who paid for the repairs? When Diana needed money for her latest business venture, who was pressured to help? Family. Me, always me. I've been contributing way more than my $800 rent. I've been the responsible one, the reliable one, the one they could always count on to fix their problems, and now I was leaving. Aya, Marina said quietly, we can't afford the house without your help. There it was, the truth. That sounds like a you problem, I replied. What happened next was honestly hard to watch, even though they deserved it. Marina started sobbing about how they couldn't lose the house. Quentin began frantically calculating numbers out loud. Diana realized that her rent-free paradise was about to disappear. You can't just abandon your family, Quentin said desperately. I'm not abandoning anyone, I replied. I'm leaving people who abandoned me emotionally years ago. Marina looked up, tears streaming down her face. We love you, Aya. No, you don't, I said simply. You love what I provide. You love having someone to look down on, someone to blame, someone to use as a financial backup plan. But you don't love me. That's not true, Diana said, but her voice was weak. When's the last time any of you asked how I was doing? When's the last time you celebrated one of my achievements? When's the last time you treated me like I mattered? None of them could answer. Then I delivered the final blow. I'd been saving this information, waiting for the right moment. Also, I said casually, I've been paying attention to our family's finances. Dad, I know you haven't been making the full mortgage payments for the past 8 months. You've been using my rent money to cover the shortfall, but it's still not enough. The house is already in pre-foreclosure. The bank sent a notice last month. I intercepted it because I pay attention to the mail. You have about 60 days before they start serious action. The silence in the room was deafening. So not only are you losing your emotional punching bag and financial safety net, I continued, you're about to lose the house anyway. My leaving just speeds up the inevitable. Marina was now sobbing uncontrollably. Diana was staring at the floor in shock. Quentin looked like he might throw up. I walked upstairs, grabbed my laptop and purse, and came back down. I'm going to stay at a hotel until Friday, I announced. The movers will be here at 8 a.m. to pack my things. Please don't interfere with them. Aya, please, Marina begged. We can work this out, we can be better. No, I said firmly, you can't. This is who you are. You had 24 years to be better, and you chose not to be. I headed toward the door. Where are you going? Quentin called after me. To start my life, I replied without turning around. I'm currently sitting in a hotel room near the airport. My flight to Seattle is tomorrow morning, and I honestly couldn't be more excited. But I also couldn't sleep because my phone has been blowing up for hours. Marina has called 17 times. Quentin has sent 12 text messages. Diana has left voicemails ranging from angry to sobbing to bargaining. They've tried everything from guilt to anger to promises to change. I haven't answered any of them. But here's the thing, I don't feel guilty. I thought I would, but I don't. I feel free. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm in control of my own destiny. I keep thinking about that conversation I overheard 3 months ago, where they were laughing about how weak I was. If they could see me now, they'd realize they created their own worst nightmare. They pushed someone they thought was weak until she became strong enough to walk away. There are a few more details they haven't figured out yet, and honestly, I'm not sure if I should feel bad about this or not. First, the financial situation is even worse than I let on. I've been paying not just rent, but also supplementing the utilities, groceries, and even some of Diana's personal expenses that my parents couldn't afford. Without my income, they're looking at bankruptcy within 3 months. Second, the house isn't just in pre-foreclosure, it's actually scheduled for auction in 6 weeks. I found the paperwork while helping Quentin organize his desk last month. He has no idea I know. Third, Diana's business ventures that I've been helping fund? They're all MLM schemes. She owes money to multiple companies and has destroyed her credit. She can't rent an apartment on her own even if she wanted to. Fourth, and this is the big one, Marina's job is being eliminated next month due to company restructuring. She doesn't know yet because the announcement hasn't been made, but I heard about it through a friend who works there. She's going to be laid off right around the time they realize they can't afford the house. So basically, I'm not just leaving them with the loss of my financial contribution. I'm leaving them right before their entire world collapses. Meanwhile, I'm about to start a great job at a respected tech company. I have a nice apartment in an amazing city. I've already connected with several social groups online and have plans to join a hiking club and a book club. For the first time in my adult life, I'm going to be living somewhere that I chose, doing work that I love, surrounded by people who don't know anything about my family history. I get to just be Aya. Not the disappointment, not the burden, not the backup plan. I can't even describe how liberating that feels. As I'm writing this, Diana just called again. This time, I actually answered, mostly because I was curious what new approach she'd try. Aya, thank God, she said immediately. Look, we all said some things we didn't mean. You know how families are. No, Diana, I replied. I know how toxic families are. Healthy families don't treat each other the way you've treated me. Come on, don't be so dramatic, we're just direct people. You called me a burden to my face and laughed about it. I was joking. Were you joking when you were measuring my room for your gym equipment? Silence. Were you joking when you told your friends it was embarrassing to have a loser sister? More silence. Were you joking when you and Mom and Dad planned my eviction without telling me? How did you? She started, then caught herself. I heard everything, Diana. I know exactly what you all think of me. Then she tried a different tactic. Okay, fine, maybe we haven't been perfect. But you can't just abandon your family over some hurt feelings. These aren't hurt feelings, I said. This is abuse, emotional and financial abuse, and I'm done with it. Aya, please, Mom is having panic attacks. Dad hasn't eaten all day. We need you. You should have thought about that before you spent years making me feel worthless. We can change, she pleaded. No, you can't, and even if you could, I don't want to stick around to find out. I'm done being your family's emotional support system and ATM. I hung up and blocked all their numbers. Since I'm already writing this novel-length post, I need to share some specific examples of how my family treated me over the years because I keep second-guessing myself. Maybe some of you can relate. When I was 16, I saved up for 6 months to buy myself a laptop for school. I worked at a local diner every weekend, cleaning tables and washing dishes. The day I brought it home, Diana borrowed it and somehow managed to download a virus that completely destroyed the hard drive. When I confronted her, my parents said accidents happen and refused to make her replace it or even apologize. I had to work another 4 months to afford the repairs. When I was 18 and got accepted to community college, I was so proud. I thought maybe this would be the moment my parents showed they believed in me. Instead, Marina said, well, I guess it's good you're starting small since you're not really college material anyway. Quentin just nodded and went back to reading his newspaper. The Christmas when I was 22, I used my employee discount at Best Buy to get Diana an expensive tablet she'd been wanting. I spent nearly $400 on it, which was a huge amount for me at the time. She opened it, said, oh thanks, and then spent the rest of the morning gushing over the $50 gift card Marina and Quentin had given her. My gift was never mentioned again, and I saw her sell the tablet on Facebook Marketplace 2 months later. When I was 22 and got my first real job as a developer making $45,000 a year, I was over the moon. I thought finally I had something my family could be proud of. When I told them at dinner, Diana laughed and said, that's it? My friend Michelle makes more than that working at a bank and she doesn't even have a degree. Marina added, well, I suppose it's a start. But the worst part wasn't the individual incidents, it was the constant low-level emotional neglect. They never asked about my day, my friends, my interests, my dreams. I was just there, like a piece of furniture they occasionally needed something from. When I was struggling with anxiety in college and asked if we could look into therapy, Marina said, therapy is for people with real problems, Aya. You just need to toughen up. When I had the flu and was bedridden for a week, no one checked on me. I had to order my own groceries for delivery and cook for myself while running a fever. Meanwhile, when Diana had a minor fender bender, the whole family rallied around her like she'd survived a near-death experience. When Diana wanted to try being a yoga instructor, they paid for her certification course. When she decided yoga wasn't for her and wanted to try real estate, they paid for that certification too. The financial double standard was probably the most obvious sign of how they really felt about me. Diana's expenses were investments in her future. My expenses were Aya being selfish again. About an hour after I blocked their numbers, there was a knock at my hotel room door. I looked through the peephole and saw my Aunt Karen, Marina's sister. My heart sank because Karen was always the family mediator, and I knew exactly why she was there. I opened the door, and she immediately pulled me into a hug. "Oh honey," she said, "your mother called me crying, she's beside herself." I stepped back and crossed my arms. "Aunt Karen, with all due respect, I'm not interested in being guilt-tripped right now." "That's not why I'm here," she said, though we both knew it was. "Can I come in? I drove 2 hours to see you." Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on the hotel room's single chair while I perched on the edge of the bed. "Aya, I've known you since you were born," she began. "You're not the type of person to just abandon your family. What's really going on?" So I told her everything: the overheard conversation, the years of emotional neglect, the financial double standards, all of it. Karen listened quietly, and I watched her expression change from defensive to uncomfortable to something approaching understanding. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I had no idea it was that bad," she finally said. "Really?" I asked. "You never noticed that Diana gets treated like a princess while I get treated like hired help?" Karen sighed. "I guess I always assumed it was just typical sibling dynamics. Marina always said you were more independent and didn't need as much support." "Independent?" I laughed bitterly. "Karen, I've been supporting them, not the other way around." She was quiet again, then asked, "Are you really never coming back?" "I'm really never coming back." "What if they change? They've had 24 years to change. Why would they start now?" Karen couldn't answer that. She tried a few more gentle attempts to get me to reconsider, but eventually gave up. As she was leaving, she said, "For what it's worth, Aya, I think you're incredibly brave. I'm not sure I would have had the courage to do what you're doing." That meant more to me than she probably realized. The next morning, I called my current boss, Mike, to give him a final update before my official last day. Mike had been incredibly supportive throughout this whole process, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't leaving him in a bad spot. "Aya, how are you holding up?" he asked. When I explained the situation, I said, "Honestly, better than I expected. I thought I'd feel guilty, but I just feel relieved." "Good," he said firmly. "You know, I've been managing people for 15 years, and I can usually tell when someone comes from a supportive family versus when they don't. You've always had this underlying anxiety, like you were constantly expecting to be criticized or let someone down. I'd never thought about it that way." But he was right. "The thing is," Mike continued, "you're one of the most competent and reliable people I've ever worked with. But you've never seemed to believe it. I always wondered why someone so talented had such low confidence." "I guess I know now," I said. "I think this move is going to be the best thing that ever happened to you, Aya. You're going to flourish in Seattle." Mike was right about my anxiety levels. I realized that for years I'd been walking on eggshells in my own home, constantly trying to anticipate what would set my family off, always bracing for the next criticism or dismissal. Living like that takes a toll you don't even realize until it's gone. Word spread quickly through the extended family about my departure. My phone started buzzing with calls and texts from cousins, aunts, uncles, and family friends. The responses were mixed, to put it mildly. My cousin David, who's always been close to Diana, sent a long text about how family should stick together no matter what. My cousin Amanda, on the other hand, called to tell me she'd been waiting for years for someone to call out my parents' favoritism. My grandmother left a voicemail that was half guilt trip, half genuine concern. But the most surprising response came from my uncle Elliot, Quentin's brother. Elliot called me around noon and got straight to the point. "Aya, your dad called me this morning crying. He said he's scared about losing the house." "Okay," I replied, not sure where he was going with this. "Here's the thing, kiddo. I've been watching your family dynamics for years, and frankly I'm surprised you didn't leave sooner." I was shocked. Uncle Elliot had always seemed to get along well with my parents. "Your parents have been treating you like a piggy bank while treating Diana like a princess," he continued. "It's been obvious to everyone except them, apparently. Then why didn't anyone ever say anything?" Elliot sighed. "Because it wasn't our place, and honestly, we all thought you'd figure it out eventually. I'm proud of you for finally putting yourself first. So you don't think I'm being selfish?" "Selfish?" Elliot laughed. "Aya, you've been the least selfish person in that family for years. You paid your own way through college. You've been contributing to household expenses. You've bailed them out of financial emergencies multiple times. Meanwhile, your sister hasn't contributed a damn thing in 4 years. It felt incredible to have someone validate what I'd been feeling. Your parents are panicking because they finally realized they've been taking advantage of the wrong kid, Elliot continued. Diana can't help them because she's never had to take care of herself. You could help them, but you finally realized you don't have to. That conversation with Uncle Elliot got me thinking about other ways my family had held me back. I realized that I'd been unconsciously limiting my career ambitions because I felt obligated to stay local and available for family emergencies. When I first started job hunting 2 years ago, I only looked at positions within a 50-mile radius of home. I turned down a recruiter call from a company in Austin because I couldn't move that far from family. I didn't even consider remote work opportunities because I thought I needed to be physically present to help with family issues. Looking back, that's insane. I was limiting my entire career trajectory to accommodate people who saw me as a backup plan at best. The Microsoft opportunity came up through a recruiter who'd been tracking my work for months. When she first reached out, I almost dismissed it because Seattle felt impossibly far away. It was only after overhearing that kitchen conversation that I even agreed to the initial phone screen. Now I was about to start a job that was perfect for my skills, with a company I dreamed of working for, in a city I always wanted to visit, all because I finally stopped letting my family's expectations dictate my choices. Thursday night, I went back to the house one last time to do some preliminary packing before the movers arrived. The house was eerily quiet. I assumed my family was avoiding me, which was fine. Going through my belongings was more emotional than I expected. I found journals from high school where I'd written about feeling invisible and unimportant. I found cards I'd made for Mother's Day and Father's Day over the years, expressing love and gratitude that was never reciprocated. I found photos from family vacations where I was clearly the odd one out, always standing slightly apart, never quite included in the inner circle. But I also found evidence of my own strength and independence, academic awards that were never celebrated, work evaluations praising my dedication and skill, thank you notes from CO workers who appreciated my help on projects, a folder of acceptance letters from colleges that I'd managed to get into despite zero family support. I packed the evidence of my achievements and threw away the evidence of their neglect. It felt symbolic. While I was packing, I heard voices downstairs. My parents and Diana having what sounded like a heated discussion. I couldn't make out most of it, but I caught fragments. Should have appreciated her more. Never thought she'd actually leave. What are we going to do about money? Part of me wanted to go downstairs and tell them exactly what they could do about money. Get jobs, stop living above their means, make Diana contribute something for once. But I resisted. This wasn't my problem to solve anymore. As I was taping up boxes, my phone rang. It was my college friend Marin, who I hadn't talked to in months. Apparently, Diana had reached out to her on social media, trying to get Marin to talk me out of leaving. Aya, what the hell is going on? Marin asked. Your sister sent me this long message about how you're abandoning your family and she's worried about your mental health. I laughed. Diana is worried about my mental health? That's rich. I gave Marin the abbreviated version of the story. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Oh my God, Aya, she finally said. I always wondered why you never seemed to like talking about your family. Now I understand. Yeah, well, I won't have to worry about it much longer. Good for you, Marin said firmly. You know, I remember in college you used to stress out about going home for breaks. I thought it was just normal homesickness. But it was the opposite, wasn't it? She was right. I dreaded going home because I knew I'd spend the entire visit being ignored or criticized. But I'd never admitted that to anyone, not even myself. Aya, Marin continued, I want you to know that you're making the right choice. You deserve so much better than how they've treated you. After we hung up, I realized that Marin was the third person in 2 days to validate my decision. Maybe I wasn't crazy after all. Thursday night was my last night in Denver, and I barely slept. Not because I was anxious about the move, but because I kept thinking about all the ways my life was about to change. For the first time in my adult life, I wouldn't have to budget for other people's emergencies. I wouldn't have to listen to passive-aggressive comments about my lifestyle choices. I wouldn't have to pretend to be interested in Diana's latest get-rich-quick scheme. I wouldn't have to walk on eggshells in my own home. I could decorate my apartment however I wanted. I could cook the food I liked without worrying about other people's preferences. I could have friends over without being judged. I could pursue hobbies without being mocked. I could just exist without constantly feeling like I was failing to meet someone else's expectations. The more I thought about it, the more excited I became. This wasn't just about leaving a toxic family situation. It was about finally having the freedom to discover who I really was when I wasn't constantly trying to please people who would never be pleased. I also thought about the practical aspects of my family's situation. Without my income, they were looking at some hard choices. They could downsize to a smaller house, but that would mean Diana would have to give up her basement apartment. They could make Diana pay rent, but she didn't have a steady income. They could both get second jobs, but Marina was already working full-time, and Quentin was in his 50s with limited skills. The reality was that they'd built their lifestyle around having my income as a supplement, and now that supplement was disappearing. They were about to learn a hard lesson about financial planning and family dynamics. I should have felt bad about that, but I didn't. They'd made their choices, and now they had to live with the consequences. Friday morning came quickly. I met the movers at the house at 8 a.m. sharp. My family was conspicuously absent. I assumed they couldn't handle watching their safety net literally get packed into boxes and driven away. It was surreal walking through the house one last time. My childhood bedroom looked so small and sad without my furniture. The living room, where they delivered their ultimatum just days before, felt hollow and cold. I found a note from Marina on my dresser. "Aya, please reconsider. We love you, and we're sorry. We can't do this without you. Please call us." I left it there and walked out. I'm writing this update from my new apartment in Seattle. It's been 2 weeks since I left, and I wanted to update everyone who's been following this story. First, my job is incredible. My CO workers are brilliant and kind, my manager is supportive, and I'm working on projects that actually matter. I wake up excited to go to work, which is a completely new experience for me. Second, Seattle is amazing. I've already joined a hiking group and made 2 close friends. I'm learning to cook properly since I finally have a kitchen that's actually mine. I bought plants. I have art on my walls that I chose. It sounds simple, but after years of living in what essentially felt like a prison, having my own space is magical. Third, my mental health has improved dramatically. I didn't realize how much constant stress I was under until it was gone. I sleep better, I laugh more, and I actually like the person I see in the mirror now. For the family update, because I know that's what you're all wondering about, the house went into foreclosure exactly when I predicted. They had to move out last week. Marina did get laid off from her job. Also exactly when I expected. Quentin is working part-time at a hardware store. Diana moved in with a friend, but according to a mutual acquaintance, she's already wearing out her welcome. They've continued trying to contact me through various means, social media, mutual friends, even trying to reach me through my new job, which was blocked by HR after I explained the situation. The messages have evolved through several stages: anger, how could you abandon your family, bargaining, if you just help us with the security deposit, guilt, your mother cries every day, and now finally what seems like genuine remorse, we realize we treated you terribly and we want to make it right. But here's the thing, I don't want to make it right. I don't want to fix things or rebuild the relationship. I want to be free of people who spent years making me feel worthless, and I finally am. Some people in the comments have said I'm being too harsh, that family is family, that I should give them another chance. To those people, I say this: you don't owe anyone a relationship, even family members, especially if that relationship is harmful to your well-being. I spent 24 years trying to earn their love and respect. I'm not spending another day on it. This experience has taught me that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally are actually the ones holding you back the most. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up, it's choosing yourself. I'm not the weak, pathetic person they thought I was. I'm strong enough to build a life on my own terms, in a place of my choosing, surrounded by people who value me. And honestly, that's the best revenge of all. Thank you all for the overwhelming support. I've gotten hundreds of messages from people sharing similar stories, and it's both heartbreaking and inspiring to know I'm not alone. For those asking about my family's current situation, I genuinely don't know, and I don't want to know. I've moved on, and I suggest they do the same. To anyone in a similar situation, you deserve better. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not what you provide. And if your family can't give you that, it's okay to find people who can. Seattle is beautiful, by the way. The mountains are incredible, the coffee is amazing, and my new life is everything I hoped it would be. I'm finally free.